just seeing everybody again, and everyone just telling me the story of their lives up to the last few years. They haven't seen each other. Some people recollecting other events that may or may not have happened, and everyone's personal narrative is, of course, part of the story. That story sometimes involves learning stories that possibly either bring joy, bring some wisdom to other people, or simply just stories for the sake of stories. I'm a firm believer that not everything has to have deep meaning. I think sometimes we can be a bit overzealous in our endeavours, and sometimes it's good just to share stories for the fun, just like, you know, share music for fun, stuff like that. So inviting anybody in the room to share a story they may have learned whilst they were here. And you've got Alistair, I believe, has a story for us.
Yeah, Waleed, which way do you want me to face? Face there, face the camera. Really comfortable. Yep. So this is a story, and I am very embarrassed to say I cannot remember which teller told it. I was too busy making notes and finding it online, and I didn't write down which person it was that told it. And it seemed that everybody else in that was around seemed to know it, and I was the only person who didn't, so I felt a bit stupid. But anyway, so this is the story of the meat of the tongue, and it's a Swahili story, at least it's originally a Swahili story, but this is how I am going to tell it. The Sultan's wife was sick. In fact, she was so sick, she was fading away. She was withering in the sight of the Sultan. And he feared for his wife's life. And one day, his wife was lying in the bed behind him in the palace, and he was standing looking over the garden. And he saw the gardener working in the palace gardens. And then he saw the gardener's wife, who was older than his wife, running towards him, running towards the gardener, throwing her arms around him, giving him some lunch, and the two of them talking animatedly. And then after the gardener had had a break, she ran back to their home. The Sultan called the gardener to him and said, "Your wife is older than my wife, and yet she seems to thrive. I saw her running through the garden before she threw her arms around you and then running back home. What is it that you do, that you and your wife have, that I and my wife do not have? Because my wife is withering away in the bedroom in the palace. She will fade to nothing." And the gardener said, "My lord, it is simple. I give her the meat of the tongue." The Sultan knew exactly what to do. He didn't even send a messenger. He went down to the kitchens himself. People didn't know what to do. The Sultan in the kitchens, but he ordered that from now on, his wife would only have the meat of the tongue. So she was served the meat of the tongue. Is anybody a vegetarian? Nobody's a vegetarian, okay, because this is, you know, because we've got to think about all the different animals and birds and fish that she would have the tongue of. She could have beef tongue, lamb tongue, pork tongue. She could have lark's tongue, pigeon's tongues, swan tongue, goose tongue. She could have cod tongue, trout tongue, carp tongue. All of these tongues were fed to her and cooked in the most exquisite way, but still she faded. So then they were cooked in the simplest way with no herbs, just grilling, so that they maintained the pure goodness of the tongue, and still she faded. The Sultan did not know what to do, and once more he was standing on the balcony looking out at the gardener with his wife lying in her sick bed behind him, fading away to nothing. And then he saw the gardener's wife running across the garden, giving her husband his lunch, them holding each other, and then her running back. And he knew what to do. He summoned the gardener and he said, "The Sultana, my wife, is coming home with you. Your wife is coming to live with me." So the Sultana, the Sultan's wife, went to live with the gardener for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the gardener's wife came to live with the Sultan for 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, the Sultana, the Sultan's wife, came running through the gardens towards her husband when he welcomed her home. She was healthy and full of color in her cheeks. She smiled, her eyes sparkled, and the Sultan was so relieved to see her. The gardener's wife had to be helped from the palace, for she was withering away to nothing. Her husband hardly recognized her pinched, gaunt face as he held her to lead her from the palace. The Sultan asked the Sultana, "What happened when you went to the gardener's home for 2 weeks?" And the Sultana said, "He fed me with the meat of the tongue." And the Sultan said, "But I did that. I gave you the meat of the tongue of cows, of sheep, of pigs, of larks, of swans, of geese, of carp, of cod and trout, and still you faded away." And the Sultana, the queen, said, "No. He fed me the meat of the tongue, and the meat of the tongue is the words that we use when we speak. And we speak story to each other, and we tell poetry to each other, and we sing songs to each other. For 2 weeks I ate as the gardener ate, but while I ate, he told me stories. He told me poems, and he sang me songs." And the Sultan learnt that the true meat of the tongue that gives us life is the language that we use creatively to create new worlds and new meanings in song and poetry, story. And that is the story of the meat of the tongue, and that's how I have told it to you. Last time I tried that one. That's a new one.
Okay, so got a small audience up there. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. Oh, hello. Hi. Hope that wasn't too offensive.
No, we enjoyed it.
Oh, okay.
And another part of the world, yeah.
Oh,
It's got a Sky audience.
oh, hello. I would have looked up to talk to you if I'd known you were there.
So I'm hoping some more people might arrive that tell stories, because at the moment it's just us. So I haven't really collected any stories. I've heard lots of stories. I haven't collected them or attempted to memorize them in any way whatsoever. So I can't hold the fort for the next 2.5 hours. So I'm not sure what we're going to do.
Is it your turn?
No, this young lady is a mere.
Oh, so I've got to just keep telling that one over and
No,
over
no,
again.
no, it's fine. There's no one here. We can chill out, relax, and have a cup of tea.
Oh,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
right.
We'll probably have to stop there, guys. Hello? I mean,
Well,
probably have to stop because there's nobody here. Yeah.
well, my solo, that's
Thank
my
you.
first solo
Thank you very
podcast.
much.
Thank you.
Well,
Hey.
I didn't know this story either.
oh, thank goodness. Hurrah. It wasn't just
It's
me.
new for me.
Good. Good.
Lovely story.
No, it's really. I just and I felt like I wasn't giving her attention when she was telling the story because I was on my phone going, "Where can I find this story?" I went, "Oh."
You found this story?
I found it. Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
yeah. There's different, slightly different versions online, but I found one that just big enough to give you